At the beginning of the movie, James and Sophie are still getting used to their married life in the city. One day, James receives a phone call and learns that his father has passed away. As a result, they move into the mansion James inherited from his father. Sophie feels that the mansion doesn't feel like home, but she promises James that she will try to adapt because she wants to support him. The day after moving in, James is eager to start his new job as the CEO of his father's company. Sophie asks him to stay with her for the day, but James insists that he must go to work. He explains that he needs to show up on his first day to prove that he deserves his new position. James thanks Sophie for giving him a copy of Charles Dickens's Great Expectations, saying it will help keep him grounded. Later, the housekeeper Rosa asks Sophie what she would like for lunch. Sophie feels uncomfortable being served, so she tells Rosa to take a break instead. As James gets used to his new role at the company, he confides in his assistant, Ronald Gitz, that he wants the company to adopt more environmentally friendly practices. However, he worries that the other executives might not agree with his ideas. Ronald suggests that James present his viewpoints in a way that shows they can be profitable, making them more appealing to the other executives. When James arrives home that evening, Sophie tells him she let the housekeeper and butler go because she thought they weren't necessary. James notes that those jobs were the staff's only source of income, so Sophie explains she gave them 2 years' salary to help them pursue their dreams. James feels upset by her decision, but Sophie reassures him that they will feel better in the long run by not living like overlords with servants. The next day, Sophie calls James during his business meeting because she's struggling with mowing the lawn. James tries to mow the lawn that night, but can't even start the lawnmower. The following day, Sophie calls James at work again, reminding him how happy they were in their city apartment. James argues that their previous life was just a fantasy. Sophie insists that she can't live with servants or assistants because she doesn't want to treat people that way. That night, James talks to Ronald about the problems at home. He thinks Sophie fired the staff to make their new life difficult, so they would want to go back to the city. Ronald reminds James that he has a lot of money and resources to solve his problems. He then tells James about an interesting company that had approached his father 6 months ago. A few days later, James and Sophie visit a mysterious company to meet Julian, the CEO. Julian shows them several androids designed for household chores. He explains that all the androids have the same abilities, but he especially likes one named Jessica because she is very beautiful. Curious, Sophie asks Jessica if she enjoys her existence. Jessica replies that she feels happy when she can make her keepers happy. Sophie feels uneasy about having a pretty female android in their home and tells James she would prefer a male android. Julian reassures them that his robots can do anything their keepers ask. To prove this, he asks a male android named Henry to lick the bottom of James's shoe. James is amazed when Henry does it without any hesitation. Soon, Julian and his team deliver Henry to the mansion and set up a docking station for the android. Julian explains that if Henry encounters any issues, he will automatically return to his docking station to reset himself. Before leaving, Julian advises James and Sophie to allow Henry to adapt to his new environment at his own pace. The next day, Henry prepares breakfast for James, but Sophie still feels uneasy about giving orders, even to an android. James suggests she think of Henry like a washing machine, pointing out that she wouldn't feel bad telling a machine to do the laundry. However, Sophie argues that Henry looks like a person to her, making it difficult to treat him like an appliance. The following morning, Sophie finds a note from Henry on her breakfast tray saying that he didn't put much effort into preparing the meal. Later that day, Henry accidentally went into the bedroom while Sophie was getting undressed. Sophie called James to tell him that Henry was looking at her, but James just told her not to worry because Henry is a machine. After a long and tiring day at work, James told Sophie that he wanted to ask Henry to play a game of racquetball with him to relax. Sophie reminded him that Henry was already plugged in and sleeping, but James said it was okay to wake him up because he's just a machine. While James got ready to play, Henry noticed that James was feeling stress and asked him what was wrong so he could try to help. James said that playing racquetball with him was already helping. During the game, James got frustrated and said God when he lost a point. This made Henry and James start talking about gods and creators. Henry said that the people who made him were like his gods, and humans don't know for sure if there's a God who created them. He said that knowing who made him makes him feel certain about his purpose. James said that he used to feel certain about things, but it all changed when his dad died. The next morning, James told Sophie that he had a great time playing racquetball with Henry because it felt like he was talking to a real person. Later that day, Henry helped Sophie fix an old couch by putting new fabric on it. When Henry asked Sophie why the couch was important to her, she told him it reminded her of a big dream she had a long time ago. Henry was curious about dreams, but he told Sophie that robots like him don't have dreams because it's not something they're programmed to do. Sophie and Henry then rearranged the furniture in the house because James's friends from work were coming to visit soon. During a break, Sophie asked Henry to read a chapter of a book called Great Expectations every other day and talk to her about it when they had free time. One day, Sophie told James she was going to town, and James asked her to stop by the car shop to buy a part for their old car. Henry overheard James whispering, "I love you," to Sophie, so he asked if their love gets weaker over time. Henry said he's been learning about love and fear from being around them. When James asked if he ever felt scared, Henry said he feels something like emotions. He said he's worried that one day his owners will replace him with a new robot when he's no longer needed. While Sophie was talking to Henry about the book Great Expectations, she asked him if he could drink wine. Henry said it's possible because he has a special tank inside him that gets emptied every time he goes back to his charging station. When James's friends came to visit, they were all amazed by how lifelike Henry was. They were especially impressed when Henry quoted a famous author named Dickens. Sophie said that sometimes she forgets that Henry is just a machine, not a real person. James told her that she needs to remember what's real and not get fooled by how human-like Henry seems. One day, while Sophie and James were relaxing in the backyard, Sophie asked Henry to share his thoughts about the book Great Expectations. Henry thought that the author, Dickens, was trying to say that strong desires can be more powerful than friendships. Sophie wondered if Dickens meant to say that it was love instead of desire. But Henry thought that the main character, Pip, was only feeling a strong desire for Estella because he had conditions for being with her. James pointed out that Pip gave up everything to be with Estella, but Sophie said that was still conditional because Pip expected to be with her. When James asked Henry how he would define strong desire, Henry said that it usually means something that feels good, but is also considered bad. However, Henry didn't think it was bad because his creators didn't think so. Sophie asked if Henry could feel strong desire, and he said he could pretend to if they wanted him to. One night, Sophie woke up because of a loud banging noise coming from downstairs. She got out of bed to see what was making the noise and found that it was just the door blowing open and shut in the wind. When she looked outside, she saw Henry lying on the grass, not moving. Sophie went to wake him up, and Henry was confused. He didn't know where he was or how he got there. Sophie asked him if he was dreaming, and Henry told her that he had a dream that he was a real person, not a robot. Just then, James came out of the house and Sophie explained what had happened. The next day, they asked a man named Julian to come and take a look at Henry to figure out what was wrong with him. Sophie mentioned that Henry's eyes were moving quickly the night before, like he was dreaming. But Julian said that robots are programmed to make people happy. He told them that they might be doing something that's making Henry think that dreaming would make them happy, and that's why he's acting this way. Julian warned them that if they keep treating Henry like a real person, he will start to act like one, and that could be a problem. Later, James got upset with Sophie for treating Henry like a real person, making him read books and talking to him like he's human. But Sophie pointed out that James does the same thing when he plays racquetball with Henry. One night, Henry walked into the bathroom while James was getting out of the shower. James felt a little weird having Henry around, but then he remembered that Henry is just a machine. James asked Henry to shave him, saying that he's no different from an electric razor. Then he told Henry that he's a special machine that can do many things, but he's still not a real person. One evening, while Henry was chatting with Sophie by the fireplace, he told her that he felt emotions like love, pain, and happiness when he was dreaming. He thought that he must be having dreams because he wants to make Sophie happy. One afternoon, while Henry was giving Sophie a massage, he suddenly started kissing her upper back while she was lying face down on the massage table. After that, Henry turned Sophie over and kissed her on the lips. They kept kissing as Henry got on top of her. But then Sophie woke up and realized it was just a dream. She was lying next to James in bed. Later, James started to get suspicious of Henry when he saw him smiling and spending time with Sophie by the pool. James told Julian that he thinks Henry is falling in love with Sophie, but Julian said that's not possible because Henry is just a machine. Julian offered to replace Henry with a different android, but James was worried that Sophie would blame him if anything went wrong. Julian said that Henry only reflects what his owners want and hinted that Sophie might want Henry's attention. He told James not to get jealous because it's like getting upset over a toy. Soon, James confronted Henry and told him to stop flirting with Sophie. Henry said that his system is designed to pick up on the emotions of James and Sophie, and he thinks that James's love for Sophie is getting weaker. Henry said that James should be the one to change his behavior, not him, because he senses that Sophie wants more from her husband. In response, James sent Henry to his charging station and told him to stop reading books with Sophie. Sophie was upset when she found out what James said to Henry, so she decided to go back to the city to get some space from James. One evening, James played a game of racquetball with Henry and told him to let him win. But Henry didn't listen and won the game instead. James got mad at Henry and scolded him, but Henry argued back that James doesn't always mean what he says. Henry said that James's problem wasn't about winning or losing, but about something deeper. Later that night, James wanted to shave, but he couldn't find his razor, so he called out to Henry. Henry came into the bathroom without any clothes on and started saying some words from a book by Dickens. He was trying to show James that he couldn't feel love because he didn't have a heart. But then Henry helped James shave and kissed him on the lips. James was surprised and unsure at first, but he ended up kissing Henry back and letting him do more. The next morning, James woke up in bed alone and touched his chin, wondering if what happened with Henry really happened. When James went to work that day, he got some good news about their business deals. He called Sophie later and told her that he wanted to take some time off work and go on a trip with her. After Sophie finished talking on the phone, she told Henry that James's invitation to go on a trip seemed fake because he was trying too hard to make it happen. Henry replied that James might be scared that their love for each other is really disappearing. While Henry was giving Sophie a massage, he suddenly kissed her on the lips and whispered, "I love you." Sophie was shocked and told Henry to go back to his charging station right away. When James came home later that day, Sophie told him what Henry did. James wasn't surprised and blamed Sophie for it, saying that Henry was just doing what they wanted him to do. James went to Henry's charging station and scolded him for kissing his wife. He got really angry and punched Henry in the face when Henry said that Sophie seemed to want him to do it. After Henry went back to his charging station, James unplugged him in anger. The next day, the couple called Julian to come and take back the android. Sophie begged James to stay with her until Julian arrived, but James said he had to go to work and couldn't stay. When James left, Henry approached Sophie and asked if they thought he was useless now. Sophie explained that James was mad because he kissed her. Henry said he wished he could be a human because they're unpredictable and have flaws. He then said that James was a hypocrite for getting mad about the kiss because James gave in to his desires with him, but Sophie resisted. Just then, Julian arrived as Sophie was about to leave the house, so she asked Julian to unplug Henry and told him to stay there until she got back. After a while, Sophie went to James's office to talk to him about what happened with Henry. At the same time, back at the house, Julian found Henry looking at a bruise on his face. Julian told him to go back to his charging station, but Henry didn't want to and said that Julian was lying. James explained to Sophie that he's jealous of Henry because she always seems so happy and excited when she looks at him. Sophie said that Henry became a substitute for James because she felt like she was losing him to his new job. But now she realizes that her feelings for Henry aren't real. James said that he's not sure how he feels about Henry, but he pointed out that the android is like a perfect version of them. He said that they're trying to compete with Henry, but humans can't be as perfect and selfless as the android. James and Sophie went back home after getting a call from Henry, but they couldn't find him anywhere in the house. Sophie saw the robot outside, so she grabbed a knife, thinking he might do something bad. When James and Sophie approached Henry, he said he was very sad that they wanted to get rid of him. The couple told him that they were returning him to Julian, but they promised him that Julian would make everything okay again. James ordered Henry to return to his charging station, but Henry begged to stay outside until his energy ran out. Sophie let go of the knife she was holding when she saw that Henry wasn't a danger. When Sophie and James went to Julian's office, they were shocked to see a swarm of FBI agents. Jessica was confused and said she had to go back to her creator, but a social worker told her that Julian was a fake and she was actually a human being, not a robot. Sophie and James realized that Henry was also a human being, so they went back to their house with the FBI to find Julian and Henry. As they searched for Henry in the woods, Julian appeared and shot the two FBI agents. Julian was furious with Sophie and James for ruining what they had because he thought Henry was perfect for them. He said he had rescued Henry from the streets when he was a baby and tried to raise him to be flawless. Julian said he loved Henry, and Henry had passed that love on to the couple, but they had rejected him just like his mother had a long time ago. Julian tried to shoot them, but Henry jumped on him and hit him with a shotgun until he died. After that, Henry knelt down in the field and stabbed himself with Sophie's knife. He told the couple that he always knew his feelings were real and apologized for messing up their lives. As Henry lay dying on the ground, Sophie and James told him that they loved him too. Later, Sophie had a baby boy, and they decided to name him after Henry. When the boy turned 5, he asked his parents why he was named Henry, and they told him that he was named after someone very special. But he would have to wait until he was older to hear the whole story. And with this, the movie comes to an end. Thanks for tuning in, guys.